Greg Capullo here, and you're watching The Comic Vet.
Perfect. Hello, Comic Army. My name is Chris the Comic Vet. Hope this video finds you safe and well. Well, July 15th, 2023, Greg Capullo found himself in Montreal, Canada. Now, Greg was hosting a very private meet and greet, which included a selfie, some autographs, but most importantly, a panel. And Greg was very, very honest and candid in everything that he shared in this panel. He talked about his past, his present, and his future, spotlighting, obviously, his relationship with Todd McFarlane when it came to the Spawn stuff that he was doing for X amount of time. He was also very candid on his Batman time, and he was brutally honest about what's going to be coming up with Marvel. So I invite you to sit back and enjoy this very special panel of Greg Capullo.
Wow. Anyway, I guess I don't need an introduction. Everybody, we all know each other, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, so just to catch up to speed, what's going on with me career-wise. Right now I'm finishing working on The Creech, which I did years ago with Image. I did 2 arcs, which I'll re-release as a trade before I do this final piece, but I've been writing in the 3rd piece just before they hired me to do Batman, so that got put in a drawer for however long I've been on Batman. Was it 11, 12 years, something like that. So anyway, I'm finally gonna finish that. It's gonna be 110 pages. I'm gonna put it out in one big fat book to complement the size and bulk of The Creech, in the meantime though, it's been a long time since I've been at Marvel Comics, which is where I really started and where my heart always is and was. Thank you, DC, for all you've done. But I always was a Marvel guy growing up, and so we've talked about various projects, but right now I'm doing some covers. They not really let people know. I tease some stuff, and then they go, "Oh, we don't want to tease these." I'm getting all the shit off the anyway, so I'm doing a bunch of covers to start. I've turned in like 4 or 5 already. A couple Wolverines, a couple Moon Knights, and whatever else. I got Deadpool, and Spider-Man, and Hulk, and Ghost Rider. They basically go, any character you want to do, you're gonna do it, So, it's like a kid in a candy store. So, I'm doing a bunch of stuff. FCO, my longtime colorist, he's gonna be back coloring me. I have wonderful Dave McKay do some pieces that you'll see with the Marvel stuff, and I did the walk-in cover that somebody brought up recently. So right now I've been just doing covers to pay the bills, because I'm not getting paid while I work on The Creech, and 110 pages takes a while to get through. But that's it, and then the intention is to do some, I'm getting kind of long in the tooth, don't want to really do the monthly grind anymore, and so at Marvel I'll be doing like high-profile projects. Those things could be 3 to 6 issues in length, but it'll be like a big X-Men thing or something like that. As a matter of fact, they mentioned some X-Men stuff, and when they want to release that, I just still wasn't done with Creech, so I have to get that buttoned up first. But you know how it is, there's always another big event around the corner, so you just grab the other one now. So you guys can look forward to me doing some Marvel work again. Marvel fans, I think. That's what did it for me. That's what did it for me. I mean, Marvel was where my heart always was, and so it's odd. There was a career path that I took, but things just sort of happen and unfold, and here I am all these years later, going, when was the last time I did work at Marvel? Holy God, so it's time, and I'm looking forward to it, man. It's like all that excitement that I had as a child. I've been turning in cover sketches going, what do you guys think of this? And they go, we can really see your enthusiasm on these sketches. I mean, and it's true, because it's been, 30 years or something. And I can't wait to go back and do some stuff with that. So, any particular characters you would like to see me do? Do you think I would bang on, or what do you think?
Ghost Rider.
Oh, Ghost Rider's been mentioned. Punisher, that's an obvious one, yeah. Daredevil, yeah, I that's where I got my start, actually. It was the first story I did. What if Daredevil killed the Kingpin? It's the very first thing I did for Marvel Comics. John Romita Sr., God rest his soul, he was an integral part of finally getting me in the door. I don't know how many of you know the early story. Do you want to hear a John Romita? Yeah. it was a very different world when I was coming up and trying to get into Marvel Comics. You know, this is before 9/11 took out the buildings and stuff, so there was no security in the lobby. And so I would just, you know, I lived in Schenectady, which is like 3 hours away from Manhattan. And I'd either drive down or take the train down, and I would just get on an elevator, no appointment, and I'd see the secretary and say, I came from Schenectady, can somebody look at my, you know, and there was always a nice editor or two that would come out and look at my portfolio. And a lot of the editors were very overly kind, you know, which is not very helpful. And then I met Larry Hama, who, anybody know the Larry Hama story? No? Oh, let me tell you. And then I'll get to Romita, he caps it off. So Larry Hama was the most honest, painfully honest editor I've ever encountered. And he started by saying, well, I'm sure back in Schenectady, you're a hotshot. All your friends tell you you're great and your mother loves your work. But now you're in Manhattan where the best of the best come and you're not shit. You know, and I'm like, oh my God. And so he was telling me, you know, how horribly bad my artwork is. And the thing about it is, when you're bad, you can't see that you're bad. It's like being stupid. You're smart, you know you're stupid. And it was that way with the art. And so I met a few times with Larry Hama, and he was talking over my head is what it was, you know. But our last encounter, you know, he had recommended books to me. Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain was his big recommendation. He said I was drawing with symbols. I didn't understand what that was. But as a stubborn Italian, our last meeting, he goes, I can see in your eyes if you think I'm full of shit. I go, I do think you're full of shit. And he goes, yeah, well, F you, get out of my office. I says, F you, I'm leaving. He goes, and another thing, you need to give up and drive a truck. F you, F you. And so it took 2 years of stubbornness to finally go, all right, let me see what that book's about. And so I opened that book, and it talked about drawing with symbols, and I started to understand what he was meaning. I won't get into the long, hard explanation for that, but I started to put some real effort into improving my drawing. I started with that book and many others, and I studied anatomy, and I really, really dug in. And then I started meeting with John Romita Sr., who was the art director at the time. And so in the meantime, I had done some self-published work. Well, it wasn't self-published. It was for an indie comic called Gorishrik, which was, you know, the city next to mine. Comic store started this black and white horror comic, and it was a door that opened, so I went in. And so now I was bringing, you know, something that I actually had print. And so one of the ones I brought, which I was the most proud of, was called Mall Rats, and I brought that to John Romita Sr. And his critique was, it was a close-up of a thumb or something. He goes, that thumbnail doesn't really seem that convincing. Okay. So anyway, he started tutoring me. He, by the way, years down the road goes, you know, I was a little tough on you with that thumbnail comment. I should have, you know. But so once he was great. One of the nicest men I've ever encountered. So, I mean, and nobody knows the craft better than Romita did. Well, there may be a son now, but he would take tracing paper and show me where I was going wrong and how to fix it and how to go right. And when I got to a certain level, Romita himself started going around to the editors' doors and going, you need to find something for this kid. You need to find something for this kid. So Romita himself, I get you'll still tell him this, and this is many years ago, but the man will never be out of my heart. I mean, this is a guy who went knocking on doors for me. And so, you know, in Daredevil, What If Daredevil Killed the Kingpin, you know, I even remember one of his lessons for that, because they weren't going to let it go out the door until he put his eyes on it. And there's a down shot of these police leaving the barracks and entering, like, you know, trucks to take them to go wherever they have to go. And I have, you know, kind of, they're scattered, and he have to trace in paper. No, you have to make like a beeline because the eye has to stake. And so the man has a big responsibility for my career today. And then the big day came when Ralph Macchio called me and offered me What If Daredevil Killed the Kingpin, and I just could not believe, you know, the phone rang, and that was it. And so that's my John Romita story. And I'll just add that he told me, and I've never witnessed it, but as he would go around to these conventions, various conventions he would attend, he would tell this story about this up-and-coming guy and the hard time he gave him. And he mentions the thumbnail, and then he goes, and that guy is now Greg Capullo. So it all had a happy ending. So that's my Romita story. So I could go on with stories. As I said, I'm Italian. My grandmother used to call me Capullo, which is a talking machine. So I won't do that. I think the better way is to answer any questions that you might want answering. That'd be the best use of our time. So if anybody has any questions, please, and you can ask me pretty much anything. My wife will tell you I'm honest to a fault. She's back there, right, Jamie? I sometimes I don't need to be so honest, right? So anything you want. Yeah, sure. You right there, lecture.
Mr. Capullo, big fan.
Thank you.
What was the inspiration behind Snyder?
Well, I didn't create Snyder. That's a Todd McFarlane creation. If I was to just answer on his behalf, I would say, who doesn't like monsters? We all love King Kong, and now we're putting some crazy cool, mechanical stuff in him. So it was just cool, fun stuff, Todd's a visual guy, as I'm a visual guy. We just go, what's fun and cool? We're like little kids. We still, we're getting old and we look old, but inside we're just little kids. And when we get together and talk about it, it's really, really pretty shameful. We wouldn't want you to hear it. So, yeah.
Hey, when you took over Batman, did it dawn on you the responsibility of taking on such a major character and really, because again, it was when you came out with the New 52 Batman, it was clearly a complete departure from everything that had been done the character had been sleeping for perhaps a decade even. For me, there's certain artists on the Batman title that have always been special for me, like a Neal Adams and a Jim Aparo. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to compliment you and say that I put you in that line of Batman artists because you really didn't disappoint when you took it over.
Thank you.
And did you feel the weight of having to be a Batman artist?
Did I feel the weight having to be a Batman artist? Not when I initially said okay.
Right.
But yeah, it sure did. And then they didn't tell me it was going to be a number one, so I and then that just amplified, the fear in me. Because, Batman is a beloved character, globally, and fans are passionate about him, and, you don't dare fuck it up. And so that weight, all of a sudden I felt it. And so then I made the mistake, which I don't do this at all anymore, is went on to a couple comic forums, and I heard, people going, oh, a 90s artist is going to be taking on Batman. Oh, he was on Spawn, Batman's cape's going to be 40 feet long, which if somebody else made the cape long, it'd been fine, but I knew I can't do that. And so I read these criticisms, and I went, eventually I just hung up the phone. But the first issue and a half, I feel it impeded my work. And eventually I just slapped myself and go, you've been doing this for so long, just do what you do. And the other thing is, some of the creators you mentioned on Batman are also my favorites, but the thing was to not look at what anybody else, and I still don't try and look at what other people are doing, because it's going to influence you, or the words you'll steal from it, and so I really wanted to just go, how do I feel about Batman, and draw it the way I do Batman. And I think that's the best approach for anything.
Well, yeah, your Batman was very, very unique, and I don't think there's a person in this room who doesn't think it was tremendously successful.
A lot of credit goes to the great stories written by Snyder. He came up with Court of Owls, which to me, I really love that idea that he came up with this concept. Batman's been around for so long, and he's so arrogant that he knows Gotham better than anybody. And here, this guy goes, no, these people have been here for like 400 years, and you didn't know anything about them. That's just really, really a great way to unseat such an overly confident character. And I just have to tell you this, and I don't want it to come off as a brag, but you mentioned Neal Adams. Okay, so as a high schooler, Neal Adams was one of my very favorite. He's a god. He was the kind of artist that made me and my fellow artists look and go, it's so great, I should just give up, It's like, how can anybody be this great, because Neal was otherworldly. So at some point, I become friendly with Neal, and now we're friends, and every time we get together, we chat, and our wives chat, and so it's like mind-blowing, right? I'm like, I'm friends with Neal Adams. Somebody picks me, I can't believe it's true. And so his wife, Marilyn, one time, and again, please don't construe this as a brag, a humble brag, anything like that. It's just, look at it as a comic book boy who grew up and now his hero is saying something like this, okay? Because that's the context. It's not to go, hey. Okay, so his wife Marilyn says to me, you know, really, Neal loves your Batman work. He says it's the best Batman work that any artist has put out, you know, other than his. and so that would have been enough, right? And then Neal said to me, he said to me personally the same thing, and he ended it in the same way. You're the best Batman. I don't care if you say this, and he named names. and he goes, next to mine, of course. He goes, but I could never say this publicly for obvious reasons. You know, these other artists, you know, to be like a slate to them. And then we're on a panel together, and he says it out loud. I couldn't believe it. And I you know, wanted to melt. And I said to my wife, and I've said to everybody, I'm saying it to you, if I died right then in that moment, not a bad way to go out. Not a bad way to go out. So yeah, that was a hard loss, losing Father Neal. That's what I always call Father Neal. And just a quick aside, you know, because I said you're one of the greatest ever to do it. Who's done it better? And I went to, well, you know, Kirby. Kirby's pretty notable. He goes, okay, I'll spot you, Kirby. So Neal knew he was a badass. There's no doubt. He knew he was an ultimate badass.
Everybody knew you were also. So.
Well, you know, I'm living in the shadow of giants. I mean, you know, I'll never be at the level of Neal Adams, somebody like that. He's just
True.
Not
just-
true.
Not true.
There's no comparison. You're on your own. You're unique.
well, thank you. You can't compare yourself. You'll commit suicide. But I'll just give you one other celebrity moment, okay? And then we'll go back to questions, okay? Okay, another hero of mine in high school was Frank Miller. When he did the Daredevil stuff, I was blown away. My fellow comic wannabe artists were blown away. And so now I'm really good friends with Frank Miller. Again, like, what is happening in my life? And but here's the story of the introduction. Okay, so it was the premiere of, no, it wasn't the premiere of Suicide Squad. That's the second part. So I forgot what occasion it was. It was in Manhattan. It was in DC Comics. It rented out on the lower floor of a bar for all of us to go. And so walking out, Jim Lee's to my left on the street, and who I know already. And Frank Miller is coming up the steps with his cane. And I see Frank Miller, and I'm starstruck. Because, you know, I'm still this little, like I told you, the shell changes. The inside little boy who loves comics and these are my heroes, that doesn't change at all. And so, Frank, I'm starstruck, and I go, Mr. Miller, can I please shake your hand? And he goes, of course, and he hangs his cane on his arm, and he shakes my hand, and we, you know, leaves, and Jim goes to shake my hand. I said, get the fuck off, man. I got my little mojo. What are you doing? My wife jokes, you need to wash that hand for a week. and so then Suicide Squad was having their premiere. And so again, DC rents out this big like banquet type room, and their tables are all set with white linen, very nice and pretty. And I'm standing over on the far end, away from the entrance, with my wife, and Frank Miller walks in. And she goes, there's Frank Miller, why don't you go up and say hey to him? And I go, oh, you know, don't bother me. You know, he's a big shot, right? I don't bother the guy, no. And, you know, and she keep pushing me, go. And then, I don't bother him. She goes, oh, big bad tough Greg, too big of a pussy, go ahead. I said, did you just call me a pussy? You know, and so I marched up to Frank, because, you know, my pride is at stake now. And so that, like, touched it off. So we're rapping for a long time. And it all went great, and I walked away, didn't overstay my welcome. And now you fast forward, we're at a signing at Midtown Comics in Manhattan. And I forgot who else was at the table, could have been Tom King or somebody, but Frank Miller's sitting right next to me. And Frank will not stop talking to me. And the fans, I'm supposed to be there for the fans. You guys are all in line in front of me, but Frank Miller won't stop talking to me. And he's laughing at my jokes, and my wife's snapping all these pictures. I look like a little schoolgirl. My eyes are, you know, I'm giggling. Oh! You know, but Frank, and I'm going, you know, I know the fans are here, but Frank won't shut up. You know, so now, I mean, he requests that I go to cons where he's going to be at, and wants to go to dinner and stuff. I'm going, well, how did my life get here? So there's I'm just like you kind of guy. You know what I mean? I meet these cats, and I'm like, can't believe it. You know, Walt Simonson, when I got done going off, I mean, okay, you know, it's kind of getting weird, he said, because I was just gushing on Walt Simonson. You know? But yeah, I'm just this little boy inside who just loves his comic artists. They're my heroes. They're the ones who made me want to do it, right? And so when I meet them and I have the opportunity to tell them that, boy, I do, you know? So, all right, back to questions. Okay, right there.
Buongiorno, Greg.
Fellow yeah. Yeah, I was a big fan of the Court of Owls series, and I was wondering, when you started working on it, were you looking at like kind of past interpretations of Batman as a reference, like something like the Nightfall series or Long Halloween? Did you kind of look at that stuff for inspo?
No, not at all. As I said, I try not to look at other stuff because, especially at this point in my career, you know, I have sort of my own thing going, and that's a good thing. That's what you all aspire to have, is your own sort of way about it. And but the honest part is, even though a big comic fan, I've not, you know, really bought or looked through comics for decades because I'm busy making them. And you know, and I'm a hard workhorse, you know, 12, 16-hour days, 7 days a week kind of guy. So you know, when I'm not doing it, you know what I mean, I'm not thinking about reading them. And so the last real Batman thing, which to me was a Bible, was Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. That is a book that just, no matter how, the thing about the Dark Knight Returns, and I can speak from a first-hand position, the older you get as a man, the more you relate to this book. You know, when he's brawling the younger dude, and he goes, and then he shows me what a fast kick is. Because your kick ain't no longer fast, right? And in your head it's still fast, but it's not really fast. And that young buck comes, he lets you know. And so when you read The Dark Knight, it's a gift that just keeps on giving or hurting, depending on how you want to look at that. But no, so I did not look at anything. I just, the thing is, somebody here came up to me, right there, and he had the old school Batman t-shirt from the TV series and stuff like that, reminded me, and that's where my first introduction to Batman and Robin was, the reruns of the 66 TV show when I was a child. So, but along the way, you know, we've all seen Batman there in cartoons and in movies, and so it's all in all of us, right? It's all in here. And the thing is, if anybody else here with artistic talent wanted to create their own Batman without being influenced by what they've seen, it would be an amalgam of everything you've experienced with Batman, how you personally feel about that. And so that's sort of just all I did, you know? I just go, I want a monolithic type Batman, just a big heavy shape, you know? And I didn't really think that what was so intimidating was when he looked like a shredded contest-ready bodybuilder. Because I knew some real rough boys who were big slabs of meat who, you know, you didn't want to bump into him, you hurt yourself, right? And so I go, that's how I want my Batman. I want my Batman to be like that, you know? And so that was like one of the conscious things I had in my head of how I want to do Batman. And then, you know, I like the idea of big fat neck and traps like Mike Tyson, you know, that shock absorber neck, you know? So I you know, amplified that. And then somebody at some point said to me, were you a Space Ghost fan? I go, I had the coloring book and everything, yeah. And they go, because you know, the way you do it. And I'm going, oh yeah. So some Space Ghost made its way into my Batman, yes. You know? So no, I didn't look at anybody else, and especially I didn't want to look at what other stuff had been done, because it would have just added to the anxiety, you know. It'd have been more crippling than helpful, I think, you know. So, yeah.
I'm a big fan of your layout. Some of your mise en scène, I don't know in English, is like just mind-blowing, like Court of the Owl. So when you get a script, do the image form in your mind, or you have to doodle a lot in order to find how you want to present a particular important, I guess, scene? Yeah,
okay, good question. Okay, first off, to really be good at visual storytelling, you need to understand cinematography. Movie storytelling. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. As a matter of fact, when I was trying to get into Marvel, one of the books that was recommended to me was The 5 C's of Cinematography, which, by the way, was out of print at the time, and I had to steal it from my local library. I still have it. I think it's back in print, so you don't have to be a criminal now to get it if you want it. I was a criminal, and it was worthwhile. It was worthwhile. And so first you have to understand the very basics of it, and then one of the things that you know was taught to me early on at Marvel when they were teaching me is, you know, we have the advantage of being able to shift panel shape. So, for instance, you know, you're locked into a horizontal with a film, but if I want to show a person falling from a very tall place, I can make a tall, skinny vertical that occupies that whole thing, and it really accentuates that distance. So you have those tools in your toolbox as well. So, okay, so started with good training. Okay, now you could have everybody with equal training. That's where your vision comes in, right? Your own personal vision of how you want to approach that story. Now, some writers work by telling their artists exactly, you know, camera's here and this one, I couldn't do that. It'd be a waste of my skills that they help hone in me. So when I read a script, I'll read it like 3 times through, but it's like watching a movie right away. As I'm reading it, the visuals are going, and then I read it again and again, and then the step is to go, okay, some stuff has to end up on the cutting floor, because it's a comic book, and so now you have to look for the economy of how to tell that story. You can't do it all, right? So there's very few times where I'll have to work out a scene because it's a struggle to really make it click. That has happened. But usually my first impressions are the ones, like when I was doing Spawn, I never did any layouts. I did it right on the board and finished. When I started working with Scott, Scott is a very wordy guy, and God bless him, I say it to his face, so there's no shame here. And so I had to really work out, how do I make the art fit around all these words? So I had to put a lot of extra effort at times to make that all work. But there's been other times with Scott where he wrote one scene which I go, dude, if I had cameras and multiple cameras, and we were making a movie, that'd be brilliant. But that is not going to work. So I just rewrote the scene. So you're still going to get from A to B, but we can't use it in the vehicle that you had in mind. It doesn't work. See, but and that's the advantage of the respect that you have to have between each other. Because that's your thing. I've been working on paper forever. You've not, so you don't readily know what will or can or won't work. Right? And that's where the mutual respect comes, and you start to making a comic book is just like being in a band. It's like you rely on your musical partners, but I'm not trying to get behind the drum kit and do your drumming for you or tell you how to do it. You know what I mean? And so if you know that you're in a band with a bunch of good musicians, you just sort of get out of each other's way. And when it's not one person controlling the whole show, you have all this magical stuff happening, right? Because now you have all these different visions and all these different voices come together. And this is how you really make a magical comic book, you know what I mean? Because it's just an inspiration. It's just one person inspired this person, and on down the line it goes. And I mean, like my colors, that's I've never done, oh, can you, because a lot of times he'll surprise me and come up with stuff I could have never envisioned. You go, this is the magic, and that's the beauty, and that's the fun of putting it together. If you can get a group of guys who are not control freaks, and we all respect it, that's the best way to make a comic. When I was working with McFarlane, there is nothing I ever did that he ever said no, can't, or change, nothing. It was whatever did it. He goes, even if it wasn't what I wanted, I'll make it work. It was that. So that when you have that level between each other, man, that's when the magic happens. And I think that's why it worked well with Scott and I, even though we came from such different backgrounds on how to make a comic book. And there was some adaptation to take from, because he would give me all the words and stuff, and like, I don't need all that, it hinders me. And but we eventually found common ground, and once he saw, what I was doing, and I told that to my wife, because in the beginning he was very afraid. Once he realized I'm not going to drown this baby, it's going to work out, and it did. And he said it really, it came together like issue 5 when I turned the visuals in Court of Owls. He goes, I wouldn't have come up with that. He goes, and you brought this, and you just go, that's when I just go. And McFarlane even told him, if you want the best out of Greg, just get out of Greg's way. And it took a bit for Scott, but once he did, and once we established this mutual relationship, which was we just want to make the best comic book for the people that we absolutely can. Our egos don't enter in. It doesn't matter if you feel great about yourself or I feel great about myself. How are the fans going to receive that? We're making this shit for you. We're artists, obviously, and we're putting our all into it, and it's how we feel. But at least for me, and probably for Scott and most others, you are conscious that we have an audience, and we certainly want to please the audience, right? Because it's better to please you than hear you guys suck, right? So yeah, we're always trying to produce the very best work for your behalf. Because also comics aren't cheap, comics aren't cheap, and so. To us, you got to give people their money's worth. You don't want to, have somebody lay down $4 and go, what a waste of money that was, right? So it's always, how do we give them the biggest bang for their buck? And a lot of you have let us know that we've done that for you over these years, and you've stayed very loyal. Which, by the way, it's like a snowball going down a hill because of the way you guys reacted to Scott and I. We were able to win a lot of battles at DC when they didn't want to do certain things because we had such a strong base to rely on. and we're making them a lot of money, it gives you more power. If you're not making a company money and you try and push against what they're telling you, it's not gonna work out. But you guys enabled us to actually bring you some of the stories we brought you because of that support. We were able to walk in and push back against them. And we didn't win any fight, and certainly Scott had to fight more wars than I had, because as a writer, that's where it starts, and they're with editorial. But it was thanks to all you guys that allowed us to bring a lot of the stuff to the table that we brought. So I gotta thank you all for that. And I want to thank you.
Well, Comic Army, I hope that you enjoyed that very special panel featuring Greg Capullo. It was a lot of fun to be a part of. Now, that was basically about 90% of the entire panel. There's about 10% that got left off after I decided to shut it down, thinking that was the end of the panel. There was a couple other questions, basically just focusing in on whether Marvel is going to be over-editing when it comes to the covers that he's going to be doing, and his answer was simply no. Whatever he decides to draw, he's going to offer up and Marvel should be using. And that's something I think is going to be very special. I hope that Marvel does say to him certain arcs and villains are going to be focused in on with cover heroes that he's going to be doing, so that they can have, you know, a little bit of a confrontation between the two. Either way, it's very exciting times to be a fan of the superstar artist Greg Capullo, like what I am. Thank you very much for spending some time with me. Make sure that you hit that like button. Make sure you go ahead and leave a comment. I'm curious on what you think of the panel. And again, apologies about the audio. I did what I could. Make sure that you're subscribed. So I see you again, Comic Army. Take care.